Let's go back now 40 years and hear what a young Pat Quinn had to say prior to the Canucks' first NHL game.
Pat Quinn, you were drafted from the Toronto Maple Leaf organization. What sort of a feeling was it to learn that you were coming to an expansion hockey club?
Well, what I'm looking forward to is an opportunity to play more often. Towards the end of the season there in Toronto, I wasn't playing that often. Of course, I play the game not only for money, but because I love the game too. And I think I'm going to get a chance to play real often out here, and I'm going to show that I can do the job.
You came with an optimistic attitude and looking for a chance to play regularly.
Oh, definitely. I've heard nothing but good about Vancouver too, and I'm looking forward to being there, I'll tell you that.
Well, from the season ticket response with over 10,000 people there, it's going to be like playing in Maple Leaf Gardens because they're going to fill the Coliseum regularly by the look of things now.
Well, I think that the fans are going to be a little better. The Maple Leaf fans tend to sit on their hands a little bit and act like they're at an opera rather than a hockey game. I hope the Vancouver fans don't turn out that way, and I know they won't.
Pat, you look like you're playing yourself into shape. It's a pretty rugged go, the early days in training camp.
Oh, yeah, training camp's always rough for me. It takes me quite a while to get moving, I guess because I'm a little larger, and I've never been the greatest skater in the world, and I came into camp later than I've been since I was 15 years old, so I think I'm going to come in a lot quicker, I think.
What do you weigh now?
This morning I weighed 2.5, so.
Whoa. 2.5 what?
How good is that?
2.5 what? I think you got to get a picture of that.
2.5?
2.5 what? I think there's a no after.
Pat, 2 points here. Number one, how could you know, as Kevin and I said earlier tonight, how could you know that 40 years later that question about Toronto fans and Vancouver fans would still apply? Because it is a corporate crowd in Toronto, and this is known as one of the loudest buildings in the league. And the second point is, you and Dale, as general manager, would gas that guy for admitting that he wasn't in shape at training camp.
Well, in those days, we had to go get jobs. I mean, these kids are all paid so much money they can just work out all summer long. We had to go get jobs, and I was going to school, and training camp was 5 to 6 weeks long, so you got in shape in camp. So, or as you kidded about earlier, you put rubber bags on and drove to the training camp. But the other part is, my first 2 years that I finally made the National League in Toronto, they were a very respectful crowd. They wore shirt and ties to the rink, and coming out here, they were quiet here at start too because they were still Toronto fans.
Right.
They weren't Vancouver fans yet, but we were fortunately able to turn that around.
Kevin.
Exactly 40 years to the day from the original opening night. You guys, the original cast of the Canucks. What are some of the fondest memories you guys had of that opening game?
Orland.
Just mass confusion. There was so many things going on, and it lasted so long that, to me, I can remember, was it Juliet singing the national anthem, and it went on and on and on. And if you see the guys out here, you know, they're pacing at the blue line waiting to get the national anthem over. So, but anyway, it was such a wonderful feeling for all of us coming to Vancouver, having an opportunity to play lots of hockey, and as Pat mentioned earlier, chance to prove ourselves as NHLers.
Dale, you came here as the highly touted rookie because you were such a high selection, number 2 behind Perreault. I think a lot of people expected you to carry the franchise, and that was probably unfair. So you had to have advice and guidance from the captain, Orland Kurtenbach, and a veteran like Pat Quinn. What did they tell you or teach you?
Well, first of all, they taught me how to drink beer. That's one thing.
That's a good start.
I never drank till I met them. No, you know, just to be myself and to rely on my teammates and not to carry the weight of the world on my shoulders. And you know, it's easier said than done, but it was difficult the first little while. But you know, having mentors like this made it easy for me. And you know, it was difficult leaving Vancouver, but having the memories of these guys being my friends and mentors, and still to this day, regardless when we see each other, it's always motivating for me. The classiest guys I've ever been around.
You were looking at me. Go ahead, Orland. Sorry.
Dale, the best babysitter we've ever had. The best.
What, taking care of the kids? Well, 19 years of age, and you guys are all older.
Our daughters, they love Dale. I mean, come in.
Well, it's good for something, right, Kevin?
Quickly, Dale, let's go back to the spinning wheel story, because there was a great debate as to who should get the first pick, either the Sabres or the Canucks, and it was decided by the spin of a wheel, and the Sabres had the odd numbers, Canucks had even, and it ended on 11, and so they took Perreault, and you came to Vancouver. What's your recollection of that almost carnival-like event to determine where you were going?
Well, first of all, we didn't go to the draft in those days. I was working at the Orr Walton Sports Camp in Orillia, and I was called and they told that I was, drafted by the Canucks. Well, we all knew that Buffalo or Vancouver was going to take Gilbert Perreault, and then if Vancouver lost, they were probably going to take Reggie Leach because he was a Western kid, and I was probably going to go to the Bruins, who had the third pick. So it was kind of startling that I ended up in Vancouver after they lost the Perreault thing, and then but I was really happy to come out here and play in Vancouver, and also get a chance to play a little golf during the winter too.
Was not, yeah, and you became a pretty good golfer. Played on the CPGA Tour for a while.
You did what?
Yeah, he did.
You were playing golf while we were.
You were out drinking beer. I was out playing golf.
You played golf while he was admitting to not being in shape in training camp. Was never wise to take advantage of those expansion Canucks with Orland Curtin back in the lineup, because he was one of the most feared fighters of his generation. I'm not going to ask Orland to comment on that, but Pat, I know your paths must have crossed before you came together in Vancouver, perhaps when they didn't? No, I mean not as teammates, but you must have played against him. You never played against Orland before coming here?
Well, Pat, you know what, Pat, they had the stick. It was like, it was that wide and that thick, and it was like a pound and a half.
Yeah.
So
a canoe.
Yeah.
Well, the question.
I remember him fighting Keith Magnuson in Chicago, who became one of my best friends, and he beat Maggie up so badly in the first and second period. In the third period, I got into a fracas with Keith, and I said, well, if I lose to him, I'll be the doormat of the league. So I said, I think you just had enough for one night, and I turned away and left him. But, Kurt was the best fighter I've ever seen, and he could really hurt you with those knobby fingers. But if you ever saw that body on the beach, you kick sand in his face.
Well, that was what I was going to get to with Pat. Pat, how feared would you say Orland Kurtenbach was as a fighter?
He was regarded as the top guy then, and fighting was different at that time. You were really more like a policeman. You didn't go looking for it, but if you had to step up to protect your teammate, you did that. We went through a phase in the 70s where guys were sent off the bench to get in fights. Guys like him never did that. But if you wanted to try, he never went looking for it. But if you, he finished a lot of fights. Never started very many, but he could finish a lot of fights. And
look at that. This is I think March of '66 in Toronto, and you took on Terry Harper twice, Orland. And I think at the end of the first fight, he got up and had a look on his face like, let's go again. And you as much as said to him, what, you want more of this?
True.
Yeah.
Terry, he was a gamer. What can I say?
He was like that the snake that sticks its head in front of the bullet. Orland would throw one right out here, and Terry would stick his face in front of it.
Great night. Three of the original Canucks, Orland Kurtenbach, Pat Quinn, Dale Talon with us. We'll continue live from the Rogers Arena on After Hours in a moment. Welcome back to the Rogers Arena in Vancouver. Delighted to have with us three members of the 1970-71 Vancouver Canucks on the occasion of their 40th anniversary. Orland Kurtenbach, Pat Quinn, Dale Talon. Next question to Kevin Weeks. Kevin.
Orland, you're in your original season, the inaugural year. You guys got off to a terrific start. What happens at Christmas time?
Well, we were playing in Toronto, and I had played Toronto with in what it was, '65. Bobby Baugh hit me low and tore my knee ligaments, and with our club as it was, we just didn't have enough depth for people to step in. Now Mike Corrigan started playing more after, and he played very, very well, afforded him an opportunity, but I think I just to reiterate in terms of the quality of the people that we had, the desire to play, and whether we went into Boston or Philadelphia or whoever the tough clubs, we were not out of any games. We were not intimidated. We had, and this reflected in the dressing room. Captain this, captain that. The guys, they supplied their own input, and that's why I'm so proud of this group of people that we had here.
But Pat and Dale, you can both weigh in on this. Orland's injury at Christmas time, because up to that point, Wayne Mackey, Murray Hall, and he had formed, I think, one of the highest scoring lines in the game. So his injury was devastating to you. It
really was. We didn't have the depth to recover from it. That was the best line in the league, we thought at the time, and certainly when you lose your leader, everybody says one guy doesn't really matter, but in this case we couldn't replace him. Both his leadership, and he was a point-a-game guy. We consider a point-a-game guy a $7 million player now, for crying out loud. So we lost our big guy there, and a lot of our heart. We still had competitive people. We come and try it every night, but we lost a big part of that early going in the season.
Jim Robson's got a lovely book out there. Actually, it was published a couple of years ago by a guy named Jason Ferris. It's a collection of his game notes from a selection of the games he did over his Hall of Fame broadcasting career. He's fond of referencing a picture on page 4. This is it. He says, every time he sees Pat, here's a rare picture of you with the puck on your stick.
You sure that wasn't me?
You didn't skate that fast.
He had his singing powers on.
Oh, look at this.
Look at that.
Nice. It's there.
We're just verifying the puck is there.
Yeah.
But actually, I know you guys all had a great relationship with Jim. Listen, I want to ask you, each of you, about how you, or two of you at least, made your homes in Vancouver. You're forgiven because you got traded to Chicago year 3, so we'll forgive you for not taking up residence here. But for you, Orland, you played 3 years in the Western League with the Canucks. Yes. Captained the Canucks, as we say, met your wife here, so I'm guessing it was a no-brainer to settle in Vancouver.
Well, as it turned out, coming back, but my wife is from here, and as it turned out, I had a back fusion in New York prior to coming to Vancouver, and I didn't know whether I had any career at all. And Emil Francis called me and said, Kurt, I cannot protect you. He was kind enough to talk to me and say, well, they had Walt Kachuk coming on the scene, Brad Park. They had a good farm system coming up for the first time, and he said, I can't protect you. So I knew it was going to either Buffalo with Punch, which I got along well with in Toronto, or with Bud Poyle here, who I played in San Francisco. So as it turned out, it was a no-brainer. It was a no-brainer, and and I've made my home here.
Let's not forget that you coached the Canucks for a year and a half as well.
I did.
Pat, you and Sandra have always come back to Vancouver, stayed here no matter where you've coached, and you've coached in 5 places, including this city. But what is it about Vancouver that won your heart?
Well, we had the first 2 years as a player here, and we went away, and the next big part of our life was in the United States, and had an opportunity to come back to run the organization as president, and that lasted 11 years. And during that time, we'd been vagabonds. I'd lived wherever I worked. That always was a thing I'd always done. So we'd established our home here for 11 years, and then when I was released from work, I thought I was going to make a career change, and all of a sudden Toronto was asking if I might be interested, and Toronto coaches were lasting about 2 years, so we thought, well, let's just not get too excited about selling. So we kept the house, and as it turns out, I think what happens, it's like probably military people. You move so much, and finally your family says, you know what, we need a place to call home. And I couldn't think of a much better place. This is a pretty good spot to be in.
Yeah, and all the memories came flooding back tonight. Boy, it's great to have you with us. I really wish we had more time. Just in case folks at home aren't aware, Pat Quinn has coached 5 NHL teams and generally managed 2 of them, the Canucks and the Toronto Maple Leafs as well. Dale Talon played a significant role in building the Stanley Cup champion Chicago Blackhawks, and now is rebuilding the Florida Panthers. And Orland Kurtenbach's doing nicely in retirement. He and his wife Laurel have 18 grandchildren, enough for 2 softball teams, so you got your hands full. Again, gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.